I'm not entirely sure if we learned more about the Kansas City Chiefs this week, their plans for free agency and the NFL draft, or more about the new generation of Pokemon. I wasn't really expecting that today. I certainly wasn't expecting to see starters. We should be expecting to see starters at the NFL Combine. That's just one intro and one segue I had in mind for today's edition of Everything Else with Joshua Brisco. I'm Joshua Brisco. It would be weird if I wasn't. Welcome into today's show. Spinning the record solo again today. And happy to do it with you in the comment section here on the KCSN YouTube channel or listening later on by just finding Everything Else with Joshua Brisco wherever you get your podcasts. Appreciate you either kicking off your weekend or maybe enjoying your weekend in podcast form with us here. I have another intro and another segue. I'm not looping the music today. I did remember to turn that off. But I have another one. Ready? You want to hear the other intro for today? Welcome in, man. It's a beautiful day in Kansas City. In fact, my phone says it is 67 degrees out right now. A high of 71 today. Doesn't get much better than that. But this is interesting. My weather app says there's a red flag warning in the area lasting until 6 p.m. tonight. That's interesting, because that's also what I thought when I heard what happened with Ruben Bain this week. Great conditions. Everything seems perfect. One big red flag. One red flag warning. Hello? I only had two intros. I wish I had a third. It would have been nice to reward the comedic rule of threes, but that's not what we're here for today. I do want to talk about what we learned from this week of Combine murmuring. I tried to set you up on Monday. My watch just fell off. Is that a bad sign? I tried to set you up on Monday to have you calibrated to learn the right things from Combine week and to pay attention to the right things, and I gotta say, this was a quieter kickoff than I feel like we've usually had in terms of when the, not tampering, because that's not legal yet, but the conversations that get had amongst teams and agents and all of that. I feel like we usually end up with a couple of, as we called them yesterday on Only Weird Games, we usually end up with a couple of Nate's Juicy Nuggets. And I'm not sure we had a lot of super juicy nuggets out of Combine week this week. There are a few things. We will talk about Ruben Bain in some detail here. I'll catch you up if you're not sure what his red flag is. You probably are, because it's the only thing that anyone's talked about as really the only downside to where he lands. I think it might be good news for the Chiefs. Plus, the running back carousel appears to be up and spinning, and we will be talking about Pokemon later in today's show. I've got the picture of the three starters loaded into the stream here. If you haven't seen them yet, don't worry about it. I'll show you on the video. You can pick them. If you're listening in audio-only form, I'm going to tell you all about them. We're going to lead you to your future. Good news is you've got like at least a year to really settle in, because it's not coming out till 2027. But happy Pokemon Day to all who celebrate. Pokopia also just around the corner. Pretty excited for that. But we're not in a multimedia roundup yet, and we're not in Pokemon Zone yet. We're talking about what we learned from the NFL Combine. So let's start with Ruben Bain. I will attempt to save the comments as they roll through that I want to see. What's up, Connor? Connor in the chat. Say time to find out if we can talk about arm length for an hour. Easily, dude. Easily. VF is Epic says happy Pokemon Day. And yeah, Alec appreciating the spoiler warning for everyone on the Pokemon front. And Cody KC says fantastic, Mr. Fox. Fox emoji, fire emoji. I always really enjoy when people show up to the stream, presumably for the first time, to see the full screen and get excited about one of my most prized possessions, my full-size framed Fantastic Mr. Fox poster. I love it very much. And a good call here from VF. The salary cap has officially been set for this year, up from $22 million. I'll tell you what I think that's going to be about in terms of how teams deal with that. I've done some of the math over the last few years, and I think that worked. So we'll go through that as we attempt to catch them all, both Pokemon and Combine storylines. So here's the Ruben Bain thing, okay? He measures at 30 7/8 inch arms. I gotta say, if you're not a NFL Combine draft season sicko, I could tell you that those are the longest arms ever measured on a human being, and you'd probably be like, yeah, that makes sense. Or I could tell you that he's a literal Tyrannosaurus Rex, and you'd be like, oh, okay, 30s, yeah, I don't. It's very hard to visualize, and also it's hard to understand. What is the difference? Well, what difference does an inch make? Why would 32-inch arms make him a surefire top 3 pick? And why do sub 31-inch arms potentially have teams removing him from their board entirely, or at least significantly dropping him to a point where he won't be there anymore? Well, here's the deal with 30 and 7/8 inch arms. This one tweet, I think this was from Stadium, is the third shortest since 1999. The other nugget to keep in mind in terms of where this sets Ruben Bain up, an edge rusher has never been drafted inside the top 100 with sub 31-inch arms. Ever in the top 100, and we're talking about Ruben Bain in the top 10. Here's the up and down of the Ruben Bain thing for me, the long and short of it, if you will. His film stands alone. His time in college is dominant and impressive. He was doing that with short arms at Miami. It doesn't mean that he won't be great. But it does mean that he would be a massive, massive historical outlier. If he goes on to be a top 10 pick, if he goes on to be a top 100 pick, which of course he will, being a top 100 pick makes him a tremendous historical outlier in terms of arm length of the position. Him going top 10 is utterly unprecedented. Like, unprecedented by a decent margin. The interesting thing, though, maybe you love Ruben Bain and you're hearing this as a counter-argument from me and you're getting angry. Maybe you're a little bit cool on Ruben Bain and you're going, okay, fine, then we don't have to worry about them drafting the guy with the short arms. Here's the interesting thing. Ruben Bain's arms didn't get shorter between last college football season and the combine. He was a historical outlier in college. He has been an outlier in terms of arm length to his production his entire football career. So the good news might be that it dings him enough to scare you away if you're a team that is really interested in David Bailey, who has the measurables but isn't quite the dominant force that we saw Ruben Bain be. Before the combine, I can't remember if we talked about this on Monday or if it came up at some other time, or if I've just thought this. But leading into the combine, I was kind of under the assumption that either Bain or Bailey is probably going to get to be a riser in terms of the couple of months leading up to the draft, where you go, oh man, he was kind of in that 7, 8, 9, 10 range, and now by the time we get to the draft, everyone knows Bailey's going 3, Some sort of process like that. I actually thought Ruben Bain was probably if Bain would have measured in with a 1/4 inch longer arms, he's probably that guy. He's probably the guy who every one of those teams say, yeah, we really like Arvell Reese. Maybe he's the obvious pick. Man, maybe we're overthinking Ruben Bain because the tape measure disagrees with the tape by a little bit. The other thing, Benjamin Solak did a write-up of this, and Seth Kaiser talked about it yesterday on Only Weird Games. Part of the question with a player with a measurable outlier like that, the issue isn't that you're not allowed to play defensive end with sub 31-inch arms. The issue is, how does that keep you from winning? Or how do you win in spite of that? Ruben Bain's never going to have a long arm, because when you have these alien NFL offensive tackles with these incredibly long arms, they're going to win that length advantage all the time. But one of the things that Solak broke down in a video on some of his socials was that the way you win, Micah Parsons has shorter than typical arms. I think Trey Hendrickson was another with shorter than typical arms. the way that you disrupt a tackle, and one that Solak mentioned, was being able to like engage with the tackle and shorten that distance between you and the lineman. The lineman wants to live with some space. That's what those long arms are good for, keeping you over there and being able to kind of control the rhythm and control the direction of the rep. If you're Micah Parsons and you're able to shorten that space and then rip in with your short little arms and there's nothing there for the lineman to stop up on, that becomes in some ways an advantage, or at least a tool that you have that's different than usual. I'm going to star this question about the tight end group because I also do want to pick up on that later. Appreciate Tim for asking that. I do want to chat about one in particular. But I am wondering so deeply now. It seems like Ruben Bain also had like good interviews and good processes, and people pointed out on socials that he showed up for his presser at the combine with like clearly relatively unkempt hair, not like nasty. He didn't have a crisp lineup and everything. People were like, that's a football guy. He wasn't thinking about getting it all shaped up and everything before his time on camera. He's not worried about that. He's worried about nailing the interviews and getting the quarterbacks. Perfect. That's my defensive end. It seems like he has, I don't know him, I haven't talked to him. I don't know, so asterisk on that. But it seems like he's getting the all clear on the mentality, the type of guy he is, the football IQ, the off the field. Like, I just haven't really heard a red flag about Ruben Bain other than his arms are really short. I don't know if that's going to be the reason the Chiefs pass on him. And then here's the other thing. I see this comment, Chiefs aren't drafting him with the short arms. Maybe not. Part of it, with picking at 9, you don't get your pick of whoever you want. If you get to Bain available at 9, and he is clearly the best player at a high-value position, I think you've just got to take him. I'm not sure I'm there. If it's Caleb Downs, if he's clearly the best player available, that's really tough because he's a safety. If it's Jeremiah Love, it's really tough because he's a running back, and we'll talk about the free agent plan there some. I think the Chiefs are going to spend money on a running back. But if you get there and there is not a disruptive player, if you only love Tate and Lemon at wide receiver, if you don't love Jordan Tyson because the medicals scare you at 9, well, if your top 2 receivers are off the board, if all of the other impact pass rushers are off the board, it's a little bit, this is not specific to Bain, this is more about the class altogether. It's a little bit disappointing that the Chiefs have a top 10 draft pick in a draft class that is lacking in surefire, obvious superstars. Reese has been penciled in at 2 pretty much since we figured out this was going to be a 1 quarterback draft. Another thing that would have helped the Chiefs. If you have 2 quarterbacks who go 1-2, that's one more player who falls into your range. But I think right now, 2 through 8 is wide open. I could see the Jets falling in love with David Bailey. I could see them just going Arvell Reese and making it easy. I could see some team early on saying, bleep the positional value, Caleb Downs is going to change our defense. I could see him falling into the early teens, maybe the mid-teens, because teams go, he's not going to change our defense. He doesn't play a position where he can alone change the defense. I think there are you probably know 8 of the first 12 players off the board. That might be about the right range in terms of, these guys are all kind of in this section, but I could see teams shuffling around tremendously in terms of what they need and what they value. So I do think the Ruben Bain thing, and again to the comments here from Alon, I opened the show with all of the measurables and why he would be a historical outlier. I don't think you can say, as the comment says here, data's pretty clear, defensive ends with sub 31-inch arms don't perform well over time. The counter to that, though, there's never been a prospect like Ruben Bain. There's never been a defensive end who has come in as an obvious top 10 draft pick in terms of his college production at a high-level school, high-level competition. The nitpicking I would do here is that there hasn't been a defensive end with sub 31-inch arms who has had a productive NFL career yet. And the other thing, just to keep in mind, an eighth of an inch is not going to be the difference between him being a good or a poor NFL player. We're cutting off at 31 because it's a round number and because it works. Again, if he came in at exactly 31, if he came in at 31 and 1/8, he's probably going top 6, I would guess. And are we overreacting in that instance to a quarter of an inch? I think what you see him do on tape speaks for itself. You are not going to get a perfect prospect at 9. Everybody at 9 is going to have a little bit of risk there. Your risk is either Bane has one clear red flag, or you're going to a non-premium position, like a Downs or a Love, or it's Jordan Tyson with injury concerns, or maybe you just get Tate or Lemon and you're just thrilled and over the moon there. But even those guys, I don't think, at least as of right now, at least as of late February, Tate and Lemon aren't getting the Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, Roma Dunze kind of hype. Maybe they should, maybe they will, maybe they shouldn't. But man, I find that all terribly fascinating. I want to go ahead now, since we're on the topic of receiver from VF is Epics, and I'm so far behind on the KCSN shows right now. Does the Rashee Rice business maybe change the draft calculus for pick number 9 back over towards the offense? I think we did talk about this a little bit after the Rice stuff started coming out. We don't have anything really new on that either, just for the record. I think it does change the calculus. I don't know if it changes the result. I think it changes the process to get there. It does seem like you're more likely to get a legitimate weapon at wide receiver at 40 overall than you are to get a legitimate, like, day one starting defensive end at 40 overall. So I really go back and forth. But right now, if you just told me, hey, you don't get to know how the board goes, but make the call at pick number 9. Just you get one sentence to tell Brett Veach what to do. I think my answer would be take the best wide receiver or defensive lineman available. Just whatever that is on your big board. Get the most blue chip player you can at either wide receiver or defensive end. And I don't feel bad about drafting for need in that instance. That's something you always kind of balk at. You don't want to draft for need. You don't want to draft because you have to have a position, because that leads to you reaching. These are two positions that are also very high value positions, where elite players don't hit free agency, great players get extensions with their current team, and this team needs short-term and long-term improvement at both of those positions. So that's why I keep kind of going like, and I don't know that Bailey's going to be a fit for what they like to do, but if it's Bane, Bailey, Tyson, Lemon, or Tate Lemon, I should say, if you told me it could be one of those four guys, Tate, Lemon, Bane, Bailey, assuming Bailey goes before the Chiefs, but just, humor me. If you said, hey, you're guaranteed that the Chiefs are going to get one of those four guys at 9, are you happy? I would say yes. That's fine. I'm okay with that. There's no guarantees. Even the elite receiver prospects I mentioned earlier have had their ups and downs. Obviously, Malik Neighbors ends up tearing his ACL. Marvin Harrison has had like a weird time in Arizona so far, where it seems I would still bet on him figuring it out, but he has not been the immediate step in. Roma Dunze is excellent, but that offense has other weapons. So, again, we love draft season because it's the mystery box and it's figuring out how to address, like, again, to this question about where your needs fall, where the value is long-term. There's still always going to be some question there. The thing with Ruben Bain is that we just know his question very obviously. It's very evident what his potential downfall would come from. Again, the outliers do exist, as Tim says here. He's an outlier, but he's worked around it to the point that he makes sense as a top 10 pick. Again, I don't want to get too deep into just like the debate of a chat thing here, but reaching at 9 would be a mistake. Take the best player available. That's a calculus still. I'm saying the best receiver or defensive lineman available. There are probably 5 or 6 real candidates there and you're picking at 9, I don't think that mentality does not lead you to reaching. I think you could argue that it's reaching at 9 if the best player available is a running back and you've signed Travis Etienne. You don't want to take the best player available there anymore because it's not the best value available. I think it's more than just who's the best player. Because if the best player goes first, then maybe it's Caleb Downs and Jeremiah Love 1-2. I don't know that Fernando Mendoza is the best player in this draft, but he's a quarterback, so he's going to go 1. I think that's just part of it to keep in mind. It's a multi-level calculus. Who is the best player? Who's the best fit for you? And then who brings you the most value at that position? So I don't want to oversimplify it because I think there are so many factors that come around there. Also on the draft front, this question earlier that I starred from Tim, any word on tight end prospects? Haven't heard you all talk much about a potential long-term solution for Kelce's retirement when that happens. Part of that, Tim, I think is that we're all assuming that Travis Kelce's back in 2026. That does not mean that they should not have a more active succession plan. And we did talk about tight end in general on Tuesday's Only Weird Games, because we talked about Noah Gray a little bit and how Seth would cut him for the salary cap space, and talked a little bit about how I'm kind of curious. I think what they do with Gray is going to be a little bit of a canary in the coal mine of where the offense shifts, because if Noah Gray is just there to take 50% of the snaps, catch some passes, but not be a real weapon as a blocker, I don't think the offense is probably going to change very much, because that's what they signed Noah Gray to do, and of course to be available as a bridge if Travis Kelce did retire either last year or this year, or before last year or before this upcoming season. If they do move on from Gray and they do put a little bit of money in a more blocking first tight end, is the way the NFL's kind of trended, that would be a schematic change. So I think that's just an interesting thing to keep in mind with the position. The other thing with tight end, at least to my knowledge, and hey, you can pre-order the KCSN draft guide right now. That is available. I think the links are probably in the description. But you can also go to bit.ly/Swanson Sucks in honor of Kent. That's the link. I got to make a link, and that's the link I made. So you can pre-order it there. I am not into the depth of the draft yet, because that guide's not out yet, and that's kind of what I'm waiting on. But Kenyon Sadiq from Oregon is obviously tight end 1 in this year's draft class. He came up in a conversation with Nate Tice and Mina Kimes that I saw this morning, where they were talking about Sadiq, and Tice was confirming that Sadiq is clearly the number 1 tight end and the only option as in the number 1 tight end. Not like last year where you had a couple that you could consider, where like Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland were arguable, I believe. If memory serves, they were kind of pick your flavor, and they both had really excellent seasons. Sadiq is clearly the number 1 tight end. He would probably be a little bit rich for his position and the positional value aspect at 9 overall, but he will not be there at 40. So I think that's why we haven't talked about him very much, is it seems like you wouldn't love taking him at 9, but he won't be there. He probably wouldn't be there even if you had some sort of Trent McDuffie trade that gave you a first round pick this year. It just seems like he's going to be just out of that range. And then I think the rest of the draft seems to be kind of a pick your flavor of tight end, which the Chiefs should do, to be clear. I doesn't seem like they're in love with Jared Wiley. I think at most you're probably getting 1 more year of Noah Gray. And maybe, again, he could be a cap casualty, which would bum me out a little bit because I love Noah Gray, but I understand why that would happen. So it's a great question, Tim, because we should be talking about that position group a little bit more. That might clarify some when we have the official word on Kelce. But again, a long-term solution, Sadiq would be a thrilling one. I haven't heard until Nate mentioning it today. I think it was on Mina's show. I might have that backwards, but I think I'm right. But regardless, that's the first time I've heard him kind of like whispered about that top 10 range and the Chiefs there at 9. Again, though, I think you end up with a little bit. If he's a superstar, you're happy. I think it has a little bit of a similar problem to some of the other positional value stuff for a guy who's, I think he's a tiny bit smaller, 6'3", not an aggressive blocker. The comp here from the Ringer draft guide is Sam Laporta, an excellent player. If you got Sam Laporta at 9, are you thrilled with that? I don't know. So I'm glad you mentioned that, Tim. I do like Sadiq, and I would love to have a reason to start mocking him to the Chiefs, but I do think that would probably be a little much. Megan says, Brenningstool. Yeah, Jake Brenningstool got a lot of hype last year around training camp and stuff. I'll be curious to see if he comes back around. In general, just as a general rule of thumb, I try to under-emphasize that type of guy, the UDFA who gets a lot of hype. But going into year 2, that might matter. I'm willing to like give him some of those training camp reps, and he might. I'm guessing he's probably around neck and neck with Jared Wiley right now. Wiley got out there a tiny bit when Gray was concussed last year, but I do think there's something for that. And then Steven says the Chiefs need a Darnell Washington type. Man, I would love that. Darnell Washington is an absolute beast. So yeah, there's all of that. VF also asked about kicker and a succession plan for Butker. I don't think his contract is movable this year. I think we've done this before, but I don't. Obviously, last year was extremely concerning. Yeah, it's all guaranteed this year. So he's here this year. You can't solve the kicker problem. And maybe it's not a problem in 26, and then you feel fine about it. In 2027, Butker has a $7 million cap number where you could clear out about $4.5 million of that if he doesn't have a rebound year. Or even if he has a slight rebound year and you just don't feel like having that much money wrapped up at kicker, you could have that conversation then. But this year, Butker's just making $7.3 million. It would cost you money to cut him this year. So wouldn't be around probably beyond that. Good questions across the board there, folks. Appreciate that. Because we have gotten really stuck talking about receiver and defensive end for good reason. But I do like talking about tight ends and even kickers sometimes. How about that? Where was the other? Everyone, please hold. I closed my tab with the notes. Right click. Where's the reopen close tab button? Chrome, come back. There we go. I think we're on to the salary cap. That was the thing. We're gonna go salary cap for the running back here, and then we'll get to Pokemon shortly thereafter for those patient Pokemon freaks in the chat. Salary cap front, mentioned that earlier. The cap for 2026 will be about $301.2 million, jumping $22 million from last year. Obviously, the first time the salary cap has broken $300 million. This was just like an hour ago this news came out, so if anyone says otherwise, I'll be curious to hear. But my guess here is that that's about what teams were expecting the cap to rise to. It's in rhythm with recent years. Now, the cap went down in 2021 because of COVID. Remember that? And then after that, it rebounded to $208 million. So kind of tracking it from there, it was $208 million in 2022. And then each year after, it was just under $225, $255, $279, and now $301. So it jumped by $30 million, $24 million, $22 million. That makes sense. It lines up with when a lot of those TV deals happened. It might explode again with the streaming deals. I don't think there's anything huge there, but something to keep in mind. Again, I think probably about what they expected. Yeah, $7 million for kicker right now is not ideal. That's true. Samuel says, so if Kelsey walks, what's our answer at tight end? That's a good question, Samuel. I will say pretty confidently, if Kelsey does retire, which seems counterintuitive right now, just by kind of the way the wind seems to be blowing. If he doesn't come back, then they are a real player in the tight end market in free agency. Maybe Sadiq is a more immediate option as a more immediate need. I want to put a pin in that for if we do get Kelsey news to the contrary. And then Tim and also Tim have told me that Control T or Control Shift T opens my most recently closed tab. Thank you, both Tims. That's excellent. Okay. Now we've got the comment from Alan that the Chiefs need an elite running back in the next chapter. Well, good news. We're talking about running backs now. The Travis Etienne buzz has continued. Just his name has come up from a number of reporters in a number of places. That doesn't mean that that's happening. That could be that Travis Etienne's agent is like, hey, my guy would love to take handoffs from Patrick Mahomes. He would love to get a slightly larger contract than what we've gotten from some other teams, whispered about, and this feels like a good fit. Maybe put out there that it feels like a good fit. That could be coming from the agents. It could be coming from the teams. That's kind of, you just got to be wary of that as you're taking in any of the sources, the sourced reporting and all of that from, hashtag sources. But that buzz continues, and then Albert Breer on SI mentioned the Chiefs as, quote, an interesting suitor for Kenneth Walker, Super Bowl MVP, Seahawks running back. I found his logic in that blurb to be relatively thin, at least relatively non-specific. What he says is right. What we're getting to Kenneth Walker is a little bit unexpected for me, I suppose. He notes that we know the Chiefs want to improve at running back, that they were interested in Breece Hall, which we knew. I would not be against Kenneth Walker, but the reputation that Chris Collinsworth mentioned during the Super Bowl of basically, he can't pass protect or catch, so that's kind of his limitations. That reputation feels like it would be disqualifying for a number one Chiefs running back. But if your other running backs are Kareem Hunt and Brashard Smith, two guys who are both at this point in their career suited to be a third down back, maybe that works out okay. Maybe Walker's just your first and second down guy like a lot of teams are functioning with right now. And he's just a hammer in your offense that way. And then Kareem Hunt comes out to catch passes out of the backfield or pass protect, or Brashard Smith comes out of the backfield to catch passes. I don't think we have confidence in him as a pass pro guy yet. And Walker caught 31 passes this year, so maybe that's all a little bit overblown in the Chiefs' eyes. Maybe they think that there's a way to work with that. But that's why Walker to me seems like a little bit slightly less of a fit, and I don't think you're taking a significant ding and saving some money by going to Etienne instead of Walker. So I wanted to mention that just because I guess the Chiefs would be, again, quote, an interesting suitor, as Breer mentions, for Walker, but I think that it adds up a little more smoothly to get to Etienne. That's my guess. Kanguru mentions I wouldn't give up on Breece Hall. That the Jets want to tag him does not necessarily mean he'll play there next year. And that's fair. My guess is that the Chiefs, the Jets are hoping to get something out of him at some point, probably another shot at the trade deadline. You can't wait for that, obviously. And I think you're saying, Kanguru, that there's an opportunity to try to get him out of New York this offseason still. There is, but now you're back to the place you were at the trade deadline where you're acquiring Breece Hall, and last year would have been renting him and then trying to extend him this year. Now you're trading for him, and then you have to extend him because you can't play him on the franchise tag with your cap situation. I guess I wouldn't say it's over, but it's a real level of difficulty away now, I think. And I don't know, keep an eye on the Jets. It's the Jets, so I do think there should all the Breece Hall, the conceding on Breece Hall, to your point, should always have a big asterisk that is jet green and that reminds us that they could do anything. So there's something there. Oracle of Delphi says, Stout said Etienne struggles with pass pro. That's also very fair. I think I'm dinging Walker in that regard, more also because he feels like a tiny bit less like the shifty, speedy guy that Andy Reid has always seemed more enamored by. That does not mean that he's going to be Jerick McKinnon in pass pro. So that is also very fair, and it's why the running back conversation I think is actually pretty healthy at this point. There are real running backs available, as Adam says here. The needs list seems a lot longer than the resources available list. Feels like we're going to be stuck shopping the bargain bins for most of these as a result. This is why I can't draft Jeremiah Love at 9. I think you can get a quote-unquote bargain bin running back that might still be Etienne. It'd be a bargain bin defensive end, but it's a middle-of-the-pack running back. You just have limited resources. You have better draft resources than you've had in years past, but not a ton in free agency. Enough to make a couple moves. But it seems like the needs list might grow to include one other takeaway from the combine here. The needs list might also include safety now. Because as Nate Taylor has mentioned on Weird Games the last couple of shows, according to him, it sounds like Brian Cook's going to have a real market. And I don't know that the Chiefs are going to be able to give him a top-of-market contract. He's an interesting one because I don't feel like we've ever talked about Brian Cook as a top-tier safety. Maybe not even top-tier, a second-tier safety. I think it's partially because he wasn't instantly as a rookie. He was a very good player where you were happy to see him in certain roles, and he flies around like a missile, and then he has that significant ankle, lower leg injury, and it kind of takes a little time to get back up to speed. And then somewhat quietly, he has a really good year last year that we talked about, but not in a way that elevated him to the Justin Reed and Tyrann Mathieu status of how we talk about those like alpha dog safeties in a Spags defense. So I am very curious to see what his market ends up being, and I think the Chiefs probably have to solve that on their own. It's also, by the way, God, I'll answer your question in a second here, Stuart. You broke my focus, so you win, so I'll answer it. I think that, by the way, to the resource thing, the Trent McDuffie trade idea is why it would acquire you significant resources, a little bit of cap space, but that draft pick would be the bigger deal. But then suddenly, corner is a real need, and really a blue chip DB is a real need. So it's really tough. Stuart says, "Hey Josh, who has the best hump move between Nate and Seth?" Nate. No further questions. Let's take a break. I'm seeing a unified response to my take, and I'll address it, but I don't want to. Steven says the answer is Seth has the best hump move. Seth has 5 kids, I believe. Adam says Seth's theme sits pretty effective based on the number of kids. VF is Epic says I'm not sure if the evidence backs that up, though. Does it? Alec says, what a nice hog. That was in response to the groundhog from the little interlude there, not in direct response to the conversation we've been having. You can't make me expand on my opinion. And frankly, I don't want to hear any more about your opinion on if Seth or Nate has better hump moves. Honestly, who said that? I gave you credit earlier, Stuart, for asking. I'm considering permanently banning you from the chat. Joshua in the chat says, gotta go to the tape, I guess. Couldn't disagree more. I'll look, we can run the analytics if you want. You guys want to do a spreadsheet, that's fine. That is a different newsletter for that film review. You guys disgust me. You know how you could get back on my good side, though? You can check out renaissance.art and look at Renee's pet commission special. Yeah, that's right. I got the graphic uploaded this time. Look at these pets. You can get a pet commission because you're hearing about it on this show for $150. It's a 9x12 portrait with a white background that includes consultation, free shipping, the digital scan. You can get there at renaissance.art/workwithme or go to bit.ly/EE-pet-special. I'm still back here. I just didn't make the graphic fit the screen. That's, I can't do everything. You can also get optional add-ons, including a full color background. You can turn your pet into a sticker, bookmark, notebook, or card. Other sizing options are also available there. It's a great gift, great way to celebrate a beloved pet. I have confirmed, Renee will also, it can be a pet with scales. It could be a snake or a lizard or a fish. It can be a fluffy pet. I don't think she's done like a hamster yet. I'm sure she'd love to. So you can check all that out again at bit.ly/EE-pet-special. Again, if you mention that you heard about this promotion, you get the free Everything Else Possum sticker, the full color little guy that rotates around before the show starts. Again, I can't show you those because all the ones Renee has made have been sent out, which has been awesome. I really appreciate everyone who has supported both this show and Renee's art all at the same time. You can do that at reneissance.art. That's RENEEISSANCE.art. It's also where you can see the Mystery Snail Mail Art Club and all the other stuff that she has available there. I believe now it is time to get to the good stuff. Today, on Pokemon Day, today's Pokemon Day, right? It's the 30-year anniversary of Pokemon being released on the world. You can see back here what I'll refer to later. This is my my small collection of Piplups, my favorite starter Pokemon, at least. I've just always been, I was a penguin kid, and now I'm a penguin man. So Piplup's always had a very special place in my heart. Also just enjoyed playing Platinum very much. It was a delight that way. We'll talk more about our starter opinions as we go. But there was the entire Pokemon Presents today to celebrate this huge 30th year. And there were a couple of things here and there that may matter to you if you're a particular fan of, Pokemon TCG Pocket, or if you're looking forward to Pokemon Pokopia, which I am, but I don't have anything to say about it yet, because I'm frankly not really watching any more of the trailers. I'm not reading anything about it, because I'm gonna play it anyway. They've got me. I'm gonna buy it. I have a Switch 2 already, which... it's fine if you don't. There's not a whole lot going on that you can only play on Switch 2, but Pokopia is going to be one of those, so I'll be picking that up shortly. That comes out in like a week or two, I think. And then Gen 10, Pokemon Wins and Pokemon Waves. That was leaked, actually. There's a pretty massive leak that I also did not follow very closely, because I'm not in that big a hurry. I'll see it when it shows up. That's all right. Pokemon Wins and Waves, though, is the 10th generation, the next mainline game. That was announced today, along with the 3 starters. And now, we'll present the 3 starters to you in visual form. If you haven't seen them, now you have. Welcome to the grass Pokemon, Brout, the Bean Chick Pokemon. Then we have Pombon, the Fire-type puppy Pokemon. Then the water starter, Gekwa, the water gecko Pokemon. Look at these 3 little pocket monsters. I will say that when I saw Brout show up for the first time, I did just sort of instinctively out loud say, Brout! And that's very appealing. He does look quite a bit like a Rowlet. That was another grass bird starter. That's a little bit odd that we're getting so close there. Also, Gekwa, this isn't the first lizardy water starter. And look, I would understand if maybe you're not super enthusiastic about all the puppy-type Pokemon. Finnegan was a fire-type, kind of fox Pokemon starter. So there are not, I will admit, these aren't incredible diversions from typical Pokemon starter designs. That's somewhat to be expected, I think. Last generation was a little crocodile, a little cat, and a little duck. That's just sort of how it goes. But these are your 3 starters. I'm going to take them off of the screen now so you can see my face again, which will be a little bit alarming after just looking at Pombon the entire time. How'd I do? I was making a face like the Pombon. I know for a fact. Let me tell you something about myself, okay? Welcome to the show. Oh, this is fascinating. Okay, my mom's here. And she says, those are adorable. The water gecko is a winner with your sister. I thought of Chloe when I saw the water gecko because I'm like, that's very much up Chloe's alley. She's just plucking geckos and lizards and stuff off of trees in Florida all the time. Makes total sense. Here's the scary truth for me. I went water starter the first 5 generations. Squirtle, Totodile, Mudkip, Piplup, Oshawott. All 5, I went 5 straight water starters in a row. Froakie, not my favorite. In fact, I missed 2 water starters in a row before I went back to Sobble on Sword and Shield. The sad little kind of water amphibian little guy, just looks depressed. And then last generation, Scarlet Violet, I went with Fuecoco, the little fire alligator little guy. I have only ever gone with that one fire starter, and then twice before I've gone grass. Other than that, I have been a water loyalist through and through. I don't think I'm going Gekwa. The water lizard did not speak to my Pokemon sensibilities as strong as the Angry Bird, not copyrighted, not that Angry Bird. It's not Angry Birds. It's one specific, it's a grumpy bird. The grumpy grass bird, very appealing. And just like a fire Pomeranian, extremely appealing. Here's the thing. Let me see. There are a couple comments coming flying through. I really need to get this. First of all, Alex says, I love Sobble. Josiah was unfortunately really bad design-wise. Yeah, that's extremely fair. Didn't have to hang out with Josiah for very long, but Sobble's first evolution was by far the best. VF is Epic says, Dear God, please don't let Pombon or Gekwa stand up on two legs for once. This is my exact take. This is the opinion that matters. If you are not a Pokemon, if you're a Pokemon fan, you already know what we're talking about. If you are not a Pokemon fan, there has been a scourge. There has been an epidemic of these adorable little fluffy starters. Their middle evolution, something still probably kind of cute and starting to get a little fierce. So many of these starters get to their final evolution. They start as a dog or a cat, and at the end and their final evolution, they are furry Dwayne The Rock Johnson. That's what happened to Litten. And I just don't need that. Meowscarada, the final evolution of the grass cat Pokemon last generation, it's at least it's tasteful, it's elegant, you know? I don't need any of these Pokemon to have abs. I don't need a six-pack on my Pokemon. You know what I want? I hadn't thought about this till just now. You know what I want for Pombon? More fluff at every level. I gotta get the graphic back up again. I don't want its face to change. I want its expression to stay exactly the same through all three phases. With just more fluff. And maybe more fire. But certainly more fluff. Man, that Gekwa really just looks like a Pokemon built for Chloe. That's very exciting. Chloe, if you're out there, I will keep my eyes peeled. I think Renee is definitely going Fire Puppy. I'm very open to the future evolutions for Brout. I do love a bird Pokemon. I love a bird, you know? I need the filter back up again. So I'm optimistic there. But I'm gonna need to see the final evolutions, because if this adorable little Pomeranian ends up just being a man with abs, I just don't need that in my life necessarily. There we go. Let me scroll through the comments here and see what else I have missed for the Pokemon conversation. Got to get past all the hump move conversation. That's no good. Steven says Josh has a nice waddle behind him, or is it a cookery? I don't even know if that's a joke. I don't even know what it means. I have my pile of Piplups, and then I have Dick Justice, formerly of radio fame. Ooh, I didn't know that Trico is your favorite starter, Alec. He says on my tattoo list. I like Trico. I do. I've just been extremely water loyal for a very long time. Sploctic says, embarrassed to say my first/only Pokemon experience with Pokemon Go, still love it. Nothing to be embarrassed about there. It's still good. I've been out of the cycle for a while, because I mostly play. I just saw this comment from earlier from Megan that says, are we talking long hump or high hump? These things matter. Steven says, instead of doing RAS scores for Seth and Nate, we do Riz scores. I'll tell you what, Nate's Riz score blows Seth out of the water. Got to, right? Okay, back to Pokemon Go. I've been out of practice Pokemon Go because the person I played with the most was Rudy Salazar, formerly of 810 fame, and now living a lovely life not on radio. We played the most Pokemon Go together, so he's my trade buddy and everything. Which, by the way, Alec, I almost told you earlier, I'm trying to get my Pokemon Go up and running again before we have a trip we're taking later in the spring. I'm gonna be ready for that. My Pokemon, since they raised the level cap in Pokemon Go, my inventory has been so full that I have not spun a Pokestop in months. So that's been sort of my congestion there. Ow, Adam says, shout out to Lucas from high school for borrowing my yellow version, then getting expelled, never to be seen again with my yellow version. Ugh! Ugh! I'm so sorry. That's awful. I hate that. Back to the Pokemon Go. It's saying that your only experience is Pokemon Go. I'm going to tell everybody something here that I just want to share. On iPhone, there is an app called the Delta Emulator, and it lets you play things like old Game Boy games on your phone if you have the file. Now, legally speaking, you cannot download that file. It would be illegal to download the file if you don't physically own the game, but my understanding is that if you own the game, you can also own the digital version. So like, I have multiple copies of NFL Street 2 on GameCube, so I'll sit here in front of this webcam on the internet and say I have digital versions of that all over the place because I love that game and I've bought it. I bought it as a child twice. So I'm clear there. I've got, for example, the card for Pokemon Platinum on DS, but I was setting up this 3DS that I got a little while ago, so I have the digital version of that. Now, the questions of legality and, frankly, the questions of legality and morality, I think, have very different directions in terms of if there is a way even, no one knows, if there is even a way to download files that you don't already own the games on. That's not something I'm going to speak about here. But there are a lot of ways to retro game now. There are also so many retro gaming handhelds that are basically built for playing ROMs and stuff on new hardware made to play old games. I really think it's a remarkable thing because it also allows all of these games to stay alive. You have an ability to keep these games accessible, and Nintendo just released Fire Red and Leaf Green on Switch, which you can play there for $20. It's just the Game Boy version, but it's there for you. You can buy it for $20. I'm a little bit conflicted on that because there's already Switch Online and all sorts of other things. But having more old games accessible is great. So if you want to just play one of those games, easier to do that now than ever before. The DS ones are still a little bit tricky because there are some new handhelds that have been made to emulate 3DS or to emulate DS games. I have my actual DS and an actual 3DS back here behind me right now. Or here we go. There's a 3DS. This was a Japanese 3DS. I had to change the language and everything. Very successful and a very fun experience to do that. But I did that, and then I think the Switch 2 came out or something like that happened. And it was like, oh man, I played Pokemon X and Y on this sucker right here. So for a long time, your only option was to like get on eBay and buy a Pokemon game used for like $100, and it's like, this kind of sucks. There are more and more ways to revisit that if you want. And also there are ROM hacks that I don't know if I can talk about or not, of like fan-made versions of games. I think if you own the original, you could probably have the ROM hack legally and free on your conscience. Just a thought there. So anyway, lots of ways you can play those games if you do want to revisit any of those. So Kangaroo says the Dolphins also have a nice waddle. Thank you. That's great. Shaquifa says, as an old curmudgeon, there's only 151 Pokemon in my head. That's also fine. I respect that. I really do. I was there for a while because that was when I got into it pretty young and then was away from Pokemon for a while, and I've been back for a while. I'll tell you, just being able to just like whip out your phone and play one of the original games in a very accessible way because you already legally own it in another fashion. You hear me? Being able to do that because you already own it in another legal fashion, being able to just play it on your phone is very cool. Fire Shiba Inu is also a good read on that. I appreciate that a lot. Tim says, have you ever played Bug Snacks? Elevator pitch. It's sort of like Pokemon, except after you catch them, you eat them. I haven't. I've heard very good things about Bug Snacks, and I think it might have been free on PlayStation Plus or something recently. I might have downloaded it. I'm not sure. I need to double check on that. Oh, man, I was going to read this comment from Alec, but I just don't know if I'm going to nail this word or not. I know the word. I just don't know if I'm going to be able to say it right on the first time. Alex says, the anthropomorphization of starters is a plague. I think I lost it the second to last syllable. There's a lot of letters in there. So there you go. How about that? We got an hour out of arm length and Pokemon. Never been more back. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us here today. Again, you want to check out the pet commissions from Renee. You can do that at bit.ly/EEPet special. If you want to pre-order the KCSN draft guide, you can do that at bit.ly/Swanson sucks. I know he's working very hard on it, but it doesn't mean that he doesn't suck nonetheless. That'll do it for us here. I think we did it. I think we're sending off into a weekend. I feel like this hour flew by, but that's maybe just because I was extremely excited to talk about Pokemon. And less excited to talk about arm length, but very excited to eventually get to the NFL draft in first free agency. So enjoy the, I might just make you guys look at the Pokemon again instead of doing the normal outro window. Enjoy the weekend. Thanks for spending this amount of time with us here today. And let us know in the comments, who's your starter going to be? Put it in the chat. Like the video, and then tell us who your starter is going to be. Thanks for hanging out with us. Till Monday. Bye, Mom! This is great. Adam says, power leveling with Pokemon by using an XP share and one-shotting the whole Elite Four with Rayquaza as a memory I didn't expect to find today. Man, that's awesome. That's so great. I will say that I am really a vibes-based Pokemon player. VF is Epic says Blastoise my goat. Hard to argue. I mean, a good goat. A good goat, no question. I really am kind of a vibes Pokemon player. I don't remember where it came up first. I don't know if this was an official Pokemon statement at some point or just kind of like a way of living your life, but somebody said like the strong Pokemon trainers, they just keep the Pokemon they like and you know, battle with them because that's how they've chosen to go about the universe that way. I think that's beautiful, which oftentimes allows me to have a party with like 4 water types. That's an exaggeration. I have to respect type builds a little bit. But man, I do want to have just a level 100, either angry grass bird or a rage-filled Pomeranian with fire. Oh, Kangaroo. For the next Pokemon talk, which Pokemon would play which NFL position? We've done that on radio years and years ago. It's probably time to officially revisit that. In fact, we did have this problem, I believe, because my number 1 pick was going to be... Hold on, let me check this. We have some music time left. If this is right, I'm gonna nail it. Yep. I was ready to make the argument that my number 1 overall pick was gonna be Machamp. But you know why we had some concerns? He's only 5'3". And I don't know if you can be successful with that kind of arm length. Have a good weekend, everybody.